Hey, Yolanda Perry here at Yolanda Worldwide on YouTube. And I am just dropping by for a brief moment because I had a thought about something pretty incredible, an amazing encounter that I had last night at dinner. But before I do that, listen, if you are brand new to my channel, welcome. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe and also click on the little bell for notifications so that you never ever miss a thing. But I'm here to talk about the fact that I believe oftentimes people put God in a box and they have these expectations of him on how he's going to move, when he's going to move, where he's going to move at. And we get so used to it happening in certain places like in church or some high service or whatever. But I'm here to argue that God is omnipresent everywhere at the same time. And guess what? Wherever he is still God, and he can still move however he sees fit. So in my case, I'm here in South Africa in Johannesburg, and I really sensed that the reason I'm here is because I felt like God was being very specific with different places I needed to get to before the end of the year, different people I needed to see and spend time with before the end of the year. And so this is one of those places that I felt like I needed to get to. And most people, when they come to a nation like South Africa or anywhere abroad or whatever, I am called to the nations. I'm called to minister to the nations. But the expectation is that when people do that, they're just going to preach or they're going to whatever. Now, I minister everywhere I go. Just simple conversations turn into ministry. So I'm always on assignment. But I didn't come for a preaching engagement. I really felt like the Lord was going to give me one final opportunity this year in order to get poured into before the new year. So I always like to say, always like to be aggressively obedient to God. And so that's why I'm here in South Africa. So last night we were sitting at dinner. We had dinner planned, and I'm sitting amongst my friends, amongst the apostle. And as we're sitting there, and we're having dinner and we're talking about the goodness of God. We're talking about things that God had done. We're comparing things that God did in our lives. And we're just having an amazing time in the presence of God, just talking about God. And I know that God probably just feels so good when his children are around the table, just sharing about his goodness anyways. It's like it just provokes him to move, I think. But in all honesty, while we were sitting at the table, what I know of this ministry that I've been visiting since I've been coming here the last year, little over a year now, is that just in common outings, there would be miracles and the supernatural would begin to move. Like God would just begin to move in the supernatural. So as I'm sitting at the table, I didn't mention it to anyone, but internally I was thinking or praying or whatever you would call it. But I was thinking, sure, I know God's going to move at church on Sunday. God moved powerfully at church the night before, at the supernatural church the night before. But I was like, I'd like God to move at the dinner table. I literally just internally had this thought that I wanted God to move at the dinner table. So we'd probably been there for about 2 or more hours by this point, and we literally were just sitting there talking about the goodness of God. And suddenly the apostle begins to see an angel standing behind my friend Shannon. And he just began to minister to her some different, very specific words. Or maybe he ministered to her first and he saw the angel. I can't remember. But anyways, he just began to describe what that scene looked like. And I was just kind of just sitting there in my space, my head down, eyes closed. And now while he's ministering to her, I am now asking God for my own encounter. Like, I can get greedy, y'all. I want my own personal encounter with God. And he began to minister to another young lady at the table, and then began to minister to her daughter at the table, just giving you, it's clear that he is in the realm of the spirit and he's confirming things for them. And I just still continue to sit there still. And I'm sitting right next to the apostle. And not immediately, but eventually God starts targeting me. So exactly what I had internally prayed would happen in that room just at a dinner, God began to move in that way. And he began to share, and he didn't know, and he couldn't possibly know. I've things I never even shared with anyone, not even my children. But he began to pray, or he began to speak what are my personal prayers, very specific contents of my heart and what I want to experience with God in my personal prayer time and in my personal space. He began to be so specific, and I knew this was God because of just my own personal inquiries of God. And he began to say things like, I'm being so vague here, so let me try to not be as vague. One of the things that he said to me is that I would just lay before the Lord or be still in the presence of God, not have to say anything, not have to, pray words or anything, lay still, and I would have these encounters with God, that God would just visit with me. These are prayers that I've prayed, that I want, things that I want to experience. He also began to specifically say that you pray for everyone else. You don't pray for yourself. Y'all, that's the truth. I am always interceding for everyone else. And I don't necessarily inquire of God or just ask God to do anything for me. That's just common for me. And he could not have known that except he got that from God. But it was so on point. He also began to say that he learned that I just recently purchased a townhouse. And he said very specifically, he says, God's going to give you another house. God's going to give you another house. And what he did not know, and my friend Shannon she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, I was like, my word, because I had shared with her in the last couple of days since I've been here that townhouse was not my ultimate house, that it really is an investment property that God gave to me. I bought the townhouse, obviously, but I didn't feel like, I knew this was not my ultimate house, if you will, my dream house or whatever. And so when he said that, I knew that that was God, because I kept saying that of this townhouse. And let me tell you, I love my little townhouse. It is a little townhouse. And I love my little townhouse, but that was so powerful to know. And I sensed that as well, that God is going to give me another house. Y'all, this was just at the dinner table. This was just at the dinner table. We just casual dinner out. God can move anywhere. Anywhere. When we don't put him in a box, and when we expect him always, not some ways or sometimes, God will show up wherever we are. When I went to bed last night, and now I got this word that God's going to allow me to begin having these specific encounters. Listen, I refused to get out of my bed this morning until the presence of God came, a tangible presence of God came. I would not touch my phone. I would not touch my computer. I would not remove myself from the bed until I felt God this morning. And boy, did I feel God. Why? Because I expected him. I got a word last night. So I'm going to test this word that I received. So I just want to encourage you today that God's still moving in a tangible way. God is still meeting with his people whenever, wherever, however, and all it requires of us is just to expect and anticipate him. I just feel so amazing in my spirit with what I came all the way to South Africa to experience and encounter. It is not that I could not get this in the States. Let me be clear, because remember, God is everywhere. But sometimes God will remove you from your place of familiarity and comfortability to get your attention or to get you to long for him in a different way. And so coming here, I'm so grateful. And I'm also learning. When I come and I sit at this apostle's feet, I come as a student. I don't come as someone who has to go and do this. And there's time for that. Literally, if I could be preaching every single day that I'm here, but there comes a time where you have to sit down and receive, meet with God and receive. And I'm so grateful that even though I could only come for a very short trip, I never come to South Africa under a week because it's a 15-hour flight. Like, who flies 15 hours just for a couple of days? But I knew I had to get here, and I was right. And I'm so grateful. But for you, I'm encouraging you, just begin to press into God, begin to expect God, begin to anticipate God. I want to read something to you that my friend Shannon, I had her send this verse to me, and I thought, let me read this to you. I told her to send it to me when she shared it with me this morning because I'm going to meditate on this. It's Micah 7:7. Micah 7:7 in the English Standard Version. It says, "But as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. But as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me." Listen, God heard me when I didn't even open my mouth. I just inside was like, I want to experience the supernatural at this dinner table. That was what I was communicating to God at that table. He heard me. He heard me. I waited for him. This morning, I got a word last night that I would just sit, be in his presence, don't have to say anything. And I didn't. And he visited with me. He heard me. He heard me. And I just want to encourage you that God hears you too. He will hear you too. Listen, if you've enjoyed, I encourage you to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications so you will not miss anything new that I decide to release. Blessings to you. Have an amazing, amazing day. See you again really soon.